This year, we've taken a little different approach to our report, and it's all at your tables. We'd encourage you to take a moment and look at it. Instead of talking just about the oil and gas space today, you'll see we literally have a chapter on all forms of energy. We reference or we talk about solar, nuclear, hydro, wind, coal, geothermal, biomass, energy efficiency, and of course, we haven't forgotten oil and natural gas. But I want to make special note of these leaders who are here with us, because we thought this year would be important to emphasize the need for a true all-of-the-above energy strategy. As we look at this American moment, it's not limited to one specific energy. It's truly benefit for all, and therefore you'll see in our report it reflects all forms of energy, all that make a contribution to this unique American moment. Now, the State of American Energy Report is an opportunity for us to come together to reflect on where we are in our society, where we are in the Congress and administration, but to also urge our nation's leaders from all political philosophies to support smart, responsible, and forward-looking energy policies that promote economic growth, job creation, and U.S. energy security and leadership. So today, for the next few moments, I'd like to share with you the oil and natural gas industry's vision for America's energy future and how we can take full advantage of this unique American moment, a moment of abundance and global leadership which no one would have predicted just a few short years ago. Since the first State of American Energy Report in 2011, our nation has not only left behind decades of energy scarcity, but has become a worldwide leader in energy production. Today, the U.S. is the #1 natural gas producer in the world. Today, we are the #1 petroleum refining industry in the world. And we're expected to soon become the #1 producer of oil in the world. Now, some of you who read about this space often know there are many who believe we're already #1 in crude oil production. Whether it's today, tomorrow, or yesterday, the fundamentals are we will be #1 in oil production in the world. During this new era, our nation has not only set production and refining records, which have created 600,000 new jobs just between 2009 and 2011, but has also added significantly to the global energy supply, which has led to reduced prices now benefiting all consumers. According to a Goldman Sachs economic analysis, the 60% drop in the price of a gallon of gas by the end of 2014, and I might add, as you all know, the price has dropped well below 60 cents per gallon, had the equivalent economic impact on the United States economy of a one-time tax cut of between $100 and $125 billion. Another study estimates that for every 1 cent drop in the price of a gallon of gas for a year, American consumers save $1.2 billion. America's emergence as a global energy leader has fundamentally reordered the world's energy markets by elevating the importance of North American energy production and reducing what had been the dominant roles of OPEC and Russia. And if we get our energy policy right today, this unique American moment could support millions of new, well-paying jobs, expand the participation of traditionally underrepresented groups, which will be critical to fulfilling our nation's bright energy future. We know that for the next 7 to 10 years, and this number might surprise many of you, approximately 1/2 of our industry's current technical personnel will retire. Over the next 7 years, about 1/2 of our industry, their technical personnel, will retire from the workforce. Replacing these jobs and creating new ones presents an historic opportunity to create an oil and natural gas workforce that reflects the increasing diversity of our nation. To better understand the scope of this economic opportunity, API commissioned a report Our report's entitled Minority and Female Employment in the Oil and Gas and Petrochemical Industries. Our report has concluded or estimates that over 950,000 job opportunities could be created by 2020 and nearly 1.3 million job opportunities through 2030 across our country in the oil, gas, and petrochemical industries. At a minimum, the report estimates that African American and Hispanic workers could make up nearly 20% of these new hires in management, business, and financial jobs through 2030. More important, the report outlines how we can increase minority participation in our nation's energy renaissance, which will be critical to taking full advantage of America's energy potential. Now, as this new year begins, we stand at the threshold of a sustained era of American global energy leadership. This unique American moment is the result primarily of American ingenuity and technological advancements in hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling. We have the opportunity to permanently diminish what have been our nation's largest economic and geopolitical vulnerabilities, those being our domestic energy scarcity and dependence on foreign countries to meet our nation's energy needs. This opportunity must transcend political parties. It should not be about Republicans, about Democrats, or independents. It's about all Americans benefiting from our nation's emergence as the energy leader in the world. Broadly, it is about ensuring that America remains a positive force on the world energy market. Unfortunately, there are still some in our society who remain mired in our nation's decades-long scarcity past, who hold on to the mindset of many years ago when we had a very different dynamic in this country. The American people want, expect, and deserve elected leaders who will place what's best for our nation's economy and energy future above partisan ideology and political posturing for the next election. Exactly 2 months ago, voters sent a loud and clear message to elected leaders. Stop the politics of polarization and endless partisanship and work together on behalf of the American people and the American economy. American voters have a clear preference for increased domestic energy production, more specifically, more oil and gas from the U.S. To gauge the depth of this support, API commissioned an election night poll which found that 66% of this year's voters said they would support candidates who backed increased oil and natural gas production. And support for increased energy development is strong regardless of political or party affiliation. 55% of Democrats, 61% of independents, and 82% of Republicans said they are more likely to support candidates who support increased development of our own energy resources. As the new Congress convenes today, and as the President plans for his final 2 years in office in a very changed political landscape, now is their opportunity to heed the will of the American people to, among other things, set our nation on a positive trajectory when it comes to energy. We want to work with this new Congress and the administration, as well as our colleagues, many represented here today, in other energy sectors, to usher in an enduring era of cooperation and forward-looking energy policy for America, a true all of the above, and to create within the American political landscape a more productive approach to national energy policy. Fundamentally, we have a choice as a generation, as a nation, and as an international community to rise to the challenge of meeting the energy needs of a growing worldwide population or to shrink from it. The fact is, fossil fuels will continue to take the lead in providing most of the world's energy needs well into this century. The U.S. Energy Information Administration estimates that 25 years from now, oil, natural gas, and coal collectively will account for 80% of the country's consumption. That same report estimates that renewable energy will grow significantly to 12% of the energy mix, with the remaining 8% coming from nuclear power. Even under their most aggressive scenario, fossil fuels still account for 65% of our nation's energy needs. We need to make sure that the small but vocal view of those who peddle the false choice between energy production and safe environmental stewardship do not prevail in their narrow view, which is contradicted by the facts. Since 1990, the oil and natural gas industry has invested $284 billion towards improving environmental performance of our products, our facilities, and our operations. From 2000 through 2012, the industry has spent more on low and zero carbon emitting technologies than the federal government has spent. And that total is nearly as much as all other industry spending on technologies combined. The fact is, our nation's greenhouse gas emissions are near 20-year lows, thanks in large part to the significant growth in the use of North American-produced natural gas, which is driven by the 21st century American energy renaissance, not by government regulation or mandate. Today, we hear calls for regulating methane. Yet, according to a recent EPA study, even with the significant increase in production that we've seen here in the United States, methane emissions from hydraulic fractured natural gas wells have dropped 73% since 2011, a result of technological innovation by our industry. Yet there are still some who call to mandate regulatory oversight over something technology and the industry is already achieving. And yet, as we've mentioned earlier, there are still a few elected officials who cling to an outdated view of American energy production to the detriment of their constituents. The U.S. oil and natural gas industry proves each day that economic prosperity and environmental progress can successfully coexist. Worldwide EIA projections demand for liquid fuels will increase by 25% in the next 25 years, driven by the development of emerging markets and nations as they lift themselves from poverty, improve their standard of living, and increase the economic opportunity for their citizens. According to the International Energy Agency, 1/5 of the world's population, or 1.3 billion people, lack access to electricity, and almost half of the world's populations lack access to reliable electricity. We have an opportunity, and I personally believe a responsibility, to use our nation's vast energy resources to help meet the world's ever-growing demand. Here at home, one of the few areas most often mentioned where both political parties largely agree is on the need to invest in our nation's aging energy infrastructure. Our electrical grid, our roads, our pipelines, and rail freight lines do not have a political affiliation, and our decisions to improve them should be equally apolitical, particularly those built by the private sector. Congress has the opportunity to make a clean break with the recent past of delay and finally pass a bill approving the Keystone XL pipeline, an important energy infrastructure project that has been now languishing for over 6 years. The needlessly protracted fight over the Keystone XL pipeline only deprives tens of thousands of hardworking Americans of well-paying jobs, and our nation of a safe and efficient means of transporting much-needed North American energy resources. Furthermore, it has a chilling effect on infrastructure's investment, reminding all that government's indecision must be part of a risk calculus when deciding whether or not to invest in infrastructure. More broadly, investment in infrastructure upgrades would generate massive economic gain. An analysis from IHS Consulting Group found that essential infrastructure improvements, and let me add, this is just in the oil and natural gas space as part of our industry, those improvements over the next decade will encourage as much as $1.15 trillion. Let me repeat, $1.15 trillion over the next decade, and 1.15 million new jobs as a result of this private capital investment. It would add $120 billion on average per year to our nation's GDP. This level of infrastructure investment eclipses the pending highway bill, but taken together, the highway bill and energy infrastructure could mean thousands of well-paying jobs and improve our nation's economic competitiveness. A good example of bad energy policy, still mired in the past, is the renewable fuel standard. Every year, American consumers pay more for their fuel and put at risk by this dangerous historical anachronism. Created at a time of energy dependence and domestic energy scarcity, it has truly outlived its usefulness and could create serious fuel disruptions and, by some estimates, a rise in the price of gasoline of over 30% and a rise in diesel fuel of over 300%. As it stands, EPA's inability to manage this program, they are 2 years behind in indicating the volumes required of us to produce in the domestic market, leaves U.S. refiners in the dark about regulatory requirements. Multi-billion-dollar industries cannot operate on government guesswork. Ultimately, Congress needs to act to correct it, since a well-intentioned Congress created the problem in the first place. Another example of misguided energy policy that harms American consumers and businesses is the ever-increasing environmental regulations that do little or nothing to advance public health, but significantly harm our nation's energy production potential and global energy leadership. While current ozone regulations are protecting the public health and will continue to make gains under the existing rules, the EPA's recently proposed tighter limits on ozone would, according to a recent NERA study, be the most costly regulations ever imposed on the American people. At a potential cost of $270 billion per year, the proposed ozone regs place millions of jobs at risk by, among other things, imposing enormous additional operating costs on America's, I might add, the world's leading refiners. And perhaps no issue better captures the potential and ongoing tension between America's 20th century energy reality, a reality of scarcity and dependence, versus our 21st century reality, one of abundance and energy leadership, is the current ban on crude oil exports. The crude oil export ban, which once was an integral part of our nation's energy strategy, is now a burdensome relic of America's era of energy scarcity. Lifting it would send a clear signal to friend and foe alike that our nation takes seriously its role as an energy leader and unleash America's full potential economically, socially, politically, and environmentally. The decades-old ban on crude exports does nothing more than impose an unnecessary cost on consumers and American businesses' global competitiveness. The President has a ready-made opportunity to achieve his vision of increased trade by leading the effort to allow for the export of crude oil. Multiple recent studies, including those from GAO, Brookings Institute, IHS, and ICF, warn that the growing volume of crude oil prevented from reaching international markets actually threatens to needlessly slow down our domestic production right here at home. Reports also found that exporting a portion of our abundant energy supplies to places like China, Europe, and elsewhere could stimulate production right here at home and create jobs in the process. We will continue to make sure that these and other facts are central to the nation's energy policy discussion, to its formulation and implementation, because the alternative invites regression to a time of American energy dependence and uncertainty. It wasn't that long ago that the current conflict in the Middle East would have meant higher cost energy and lower supplies here in the United States. In fact, many of you are aware that the director of EIA, Adam Szymanski, has indicated that but for our domestic increased production, the price of oil today would likely be over $150. Instead today, thanks to America's 21st century energy renaissance, the North American energy market is better insulated against negative events on the world stage. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to show the world how energy abundance can be used as a positive force rather than as a tool to harm or to control other nations, as some still use their energy abundance. We should no more adopt or tolerate politics that pull us back towards energy dependence and uncertainty than we should adopt policies that reverse gains we've made in other areas of our society. Our vision is one that safeguards the progress we've made to date and truly builds on the momentum moving forward. Our vision of the world is one where more and more people have access to reliable, safe, and affordable electricity, no matter which continent or hemisphere they call home. Our vision for our nation's energy future is inclusive, it's realistic, and above all, rooted in the belief that energy's fundamental role in our society is a positive that should be encouraged rather than hampered. The women and men who work in America's oil and natural gas industry share with their colleagues in the solar, hydropower, coal, wind, renewables, nuclear, and energy efficiency industries, many who are represented here today, the goal of meeting the energy needs of our nation and of the world. Ultimately, we need an American consensus on energy policy that encourages leaders to act with a sense of urgency. We need to foster better understanding and be willing to set aside partisan ideology to advance smart energy policies. We will contrast our vision of economic growth, expanded economic opportunity for millions, and long-term American leadership against the contrarian view which would result in a lower standard of living, shrinking economy, and ultimately American energy dependence. The choice is that stark and fundamentally that simple. Our fundamental message is equally simple. Energy is central to our way of life, and we will need more of it for many years to come. Together, we call on our President, on the new Congress, and elected leaders in every state legislature around the country to work with us to ensure that the 21st century America and future generations only know their nation as a global energy leader. We will continue to work with anyone interested in transforming this American moment of energy abundance and global energy leadership into a decades-long energy reality that creates jobs and sustained economic growth for all Americans. Thank you very much for your attention today. We appreciate you being here, and thank you.